All of a sudden, a young man was transported to another world, finding himself surrounded by small, glowing-eyed creatures in a dark forest. He had no cheat skills, all he possessed was a young body and a status screen with meager stats. Overwhelmed with fear, he collapses and cries out, wondering how he could possibly survive in this world. Yudo Mamiya, a salesman for a certain company, is working outside. He complains about his obstinate superior forcing him to wear a suit in such hot weather. He exclaims about how hot it is. He wishes he had gone to work using a car, even if he had to pay for the gas with his own money. His company is a black company obsessed with passion pay, and he feels he can't quit even if he wants to. His life is a grueling cycle of work, commuting on crowded trains, and sleeping, all for a salary that barely pays the bills. While walking past a bookstore, he notices a new book, finding a small moment of interest. His recent hobby involves reading. He enjoys stories about plain-looking protagonists being transported to other worlds and becoming overpowered, having also played fantasy games in the past. While escaping reality, he jokingly pleads for a goddess to take him to another world too. Sighing, he decides it's time to get back to work. Suddenly, a mysterious voice announces that it has found him. Startled, Yudo quickly looks around his immediate surroundings. Seeing no one, he nervously wonders if what he heard was a ghost. He stands confused by the strange occurrence. Suddenly, he is pulled into a dark, empty space, where a voice greets him and apologizes for bringing him in so suddenly. A small, childlike being appears and announces that from here on, they are thinking of sending him to another world. Yudo is shocked by this unbelievable situation. He realizes he is being sent to another world and wonders if the person with the acorn-shaped hair is some kind of god. Yudo tries to rationalize the situation as a strange dream caused by heatstroke, but the deity clarifies that it is not a dream and that they pulled him into this space. The deity excitedly explains that the world they are sending him to is a fantasy world full of weapons, magic and skills. Finally accepting that this is real, Yudo excitedly asks if this means he could have a cheat skill or two. A different smiling person appears and bluntly states that he is not doing that. Yudo is left speechless by the sudden change and refusal. He argues that sending him there without anything is a suicidal act and demands to be returned to his own world. He tries to convince himself to forget the whole thing and treat it as a dream. The deity explains that because Yudo is not satisfied with his current life, he will gladly go, and that is also the reason they could show themselves to him. Yudo is stunned into silence by this declaration. He reflects that as a student, he spent all his time immersed in virtual space, so it's not like he isn't interested in being sent to another world. However, he doesn't want to choose a future where he dies in vain. He internally curses the deity, comparing their logic to that of his shitty director. In that case, he decides he will force the deity to give him a cheat skill, no matter what. The deity calmly asks him, "You'll go, right?" Yudo argues that he has no experience in martial arts, magic or skills, and questions if the deity's objective is to watch people they sent squirm in pain. He shouts that if they send him there as he is, he will definitely die, questioning if they are sending him there just to see him die in vain. The deity states they don't have that kind of hobby, but agrees they could help with something. Yudo sees a glimmer of hope. A back-and-forth negotiation begins, with the deity suggesting starting at 0 years old, and Yudo countering that he'll still die without skills and asking for a blessing or to be made 13. Finally, the deity offers to give him one special thing, a handmade status screen that he can always see, which Yudo accepts. Yudo continues to insist on a cheat skill, but the deity, annoyed, tells him he's noisy and to just go already. As he is pushed into a portal, Yudo screams in protest that he didn't get any improvements and questions the point of a status screen, while the deity sighs in exasperation. The deity states that in any case, he will be the most blessed existence. They pose a question to the departing Yudo: will he destroy and awaken or be destroyed? They look forward to seeing which path he will go down. Landing in a dense forest, Yudo Mamiya curses the acorn head god for sending him to such a place. He panics, realizing his experience as an RPG player is useless in a real survival situation. Shaking off his initial complaints, Yudo realizes this is no time for despair. He looks at his hands and understands that the deity kept their promise to make him younger. He briefly regrets his negotiation with the deity, feeling he could have secured a better deal. However, he quickly steels himself, deciding to focus on the positives, and is determined not to give up so easily. With night approaching, Yudo knows he must find shelter, water, and food. He takes inventory of his belongings from his previous life. His supplies include office supplies, a flashlight, and screwdrivers he considers using as makeshift weapons. Though his formal clothes are ill-suited for survival, Yudo resolves to push forward. Fueled by a desire to defy the god who sent him here, he vows to struggle until the very end. Just then, he notices a white circle at the edge of his vision and wonders if it's the promised status screen. A massive screen materializes before him with a startling suddenness, causing him to cry out in shock. The status screen is so large it obstructs his view. The deity who sent him here finds this amusing. Yudo examines the interface, which displays his name, Mamiya Yudo, his stats at level 1 and an empty blessing and title. He then discovers the skill list. He is astounded by the vast array of over 100 skills available. The system is intuitive, much like a game, showing skill progression bars and potential upgrades. However, he starts with 0 skill points and has no idea how to earn them. For now, he decides to record his initial status. While engrossed in the skill list, Yudo is caught off guard by a horned, rabbit-like monster that appears from the bushes. Having never been in a real fight, he panics, wondering if he stands any chance of defeating it. He forces himself to observe the creature, noting its size and dangerous horn. He imagines the fatal consequences of being struck. With no medical supplies, he concludes he must approach the fight with extreme caution. He tries to predict its attack pattern. He anticipates a charge attack from the creature. He removes his suit jacket, preparing his countermove. The creature charges with surprising speed. Just as he planned, Yudo uses his jacket to obscure the monster's vision, causing it to swerve and miss its target. Mourning his expensive custom suit, he throws the jacket completely over the monster's head. He then tackles the blinded creature. He wrestles it to the ground as it struggles violently beneath him. With grim determination, Yudo uses his sturdy 8,000 yen necktie to finish the job. After a desperate struggle, he collapses, panting heavily and wondering if the creature is finally dead. Exhausted but victorious, Yudo takes a moment to recover in the quiet forest after his first kill. Realizing he can't rest yet, Yudo knows he must find shelter for the night. He spots a massive tree that looks climbable. Mustering his remaining strength, he prepares to scale it. After a difficult climb, he reaches a high branch and surveys his surroundings. The endless sea of trees stretches out before him, with no sign of civilization. He grimly acknowledges that the deity truly intended to kill him from the very beginning. From his high vantage point, he can see the sun and get his bearings. He spots a distant mountain, hoping a settlement lies beyond. Though the challenges ahead seem overwhelming, a sliver of hope opens up his future. He resolves to conquer this sea of trees. Mamiya Yudo recounts his story. He was suddenly brought into another world by a peculiar god. Transformed into a younger version of himself and given a status screen, he managed to survive a dangerous situation with his quick thinking and courage. He spent his first night safely atop a tree, away from the dangers below. Yudo wakes with a start, realizing his dream of a happy life in another world was just that. Annoyed by the uncomfortable sleeping arrangement, he gets up while complaining about his aches and missing his soft bed. He resolves to find a river and gather food, keeping the horned rabbit he killed as an emergency meal. Checking his watch, Yudo realizes he can at least tell the time. He marvels at the multifunctional watch, a piece of modern wisdom complete with a compass, feeling foolish for not thinking of it sooner. He reasons that it's natural to miss small details in such a dire situation as he climbs down from the tree. A bird suddenly flutters past, startling him. He sees the bird pecking at a cluster of fruit and deduces they must be edible. Despite his fear that they could be poisonous, he decides to take the risk. To his immense relief, the fruit is delicious. He decides to gather as many of the delicious fruits as he can. He then checks his status and notices a new gathering skill bar. He also sees an EXP bar for his taijutsu skill and correctly deduces that he can increase his skill levels by performing related actions. Yudo is overjoyed, realizing this world operates like a game. This newfound knowledge gives him hope that he might actually be able to survive. He spots a figure in the distance, surprised to see something that looks real and humanoid. He reasons that since the creature is a humanoid monster, it's fine to kill it, feeling confident that he won't lose. The figure is a goblin busy eating something in the bushes. The goblin suddenly spots Yudo, its eye reflecting his silhouette. With a piercing shriek, it lunges forward to attack. The sudden aggression catches Yudo completely by surprise. The goblin's fierce attack sends Yuuto flying backward, and he lands hard on the ground, wounded and groaning in pain. He manages to stab the goblin's eye with a screwdriver. He berates himself for being too naive. He realizes with dawning horror that as a level 1, his stats are lower than the goblin's. Yuuto understands that this isn't a game where goblins are easy experience points. This creature is a real threat, trying to kill him with full hostility. He steals his resolve, knowing he must discard his naive thinking and kill it to survive. With grim determination, Yuuto repeatedly stabs the struggling goblin. He presses his attack relentlessly. The creature finally falls silent. Panting from exhaustion, Yuuto reflects on the outcome of the fight. He admits that his carelessness and overconfidence led to his injury and that a surprise attack would have been more effective. He looks at his wound, hoping it doesn't get worse. Yuuto reminds himself that this is not a game, and he must be more careful. His attention is drawn to something near where the goblin was. To his horror, he discovers the mangled, armored arm of a human, a grim reminder that death is a very real possibility here. A dark, ominous presence emerges from the nearby bushes. Startled, Yuuto turns toward the new threat. An unseen force strikes Yuuto, knocking him off his feet. He collapses to the ground, coughing and struggling to breathe. He is completely bewildered by the sudden attack. A large, mole-like creature emerges from the ground with a cry. Yuuto's first fleeting thought is that it looks cute. He quickly reminds himself that this creature just attacked him and is a serious threat. The creature begins to gather energy, and Yuuto realizes it's preparing a magic spell. Trapped in the enemy's attack range and unsure of what's coming, he decides his only option is to try and guard against it. Yuuto raises his bag to block the incoming projectile. The impact shakes him. He realizes the attack's firepower is immense, even reduced by his bag, and he knows he won't survive many more hits. Realizing he can't just keep defending and lacking the confidence to dodge, Yuuto weighs his options. He makes a bold decision, dropping his bag and charging forward. The mole-like creature continues its attack. It seems surprised by his sudden advance. As the mole creature prepares another magical assault, Yuuto sprints past the projectile and lands a powerful kick directly on its head, ending the fight. Standing over the fallen monster, Yuuto acknowledges how troublesome its long-range attack was, relieved he killed it before it could fire again. A notification announces he has reached level 2. Exhausted, he collapses against a tree, reflecting on how truly harsh this world is. Exhausted from sleeping in a tree, the young man reflects on the harshness of his situation. The recent battles against a goblin and a mole have taken their toll, leaving him wounded and in desperate need of a place to wash up. Feeling filthy, dehydrated, and at his absolute limit, he is about to give up. He looks up to see a glimmer of light through the trees, wondering if he has finally reached a source of water. Overcome with relief, he leaps through the air and races towards the water, shouting with joy. After reaching the stream, he hangs his clothes to dry and takes stock of his resources. He has fresh water to drink and fish in the stream. He also has the rabbit he killed earlier for meat. Proud of the fish trap he constructed, he readies himself for his next task. Holding a freshly caught fish, he declares that it's time to learn fire magic. Returning to his resting spot, he prepares to use his skill points. He decides to use the 2 points he gained from leveling up to learn fire magic. Alright, he excitedly decides to add another point to it. A notification confirms he has learned level 1 fire magic, and he celebrates joyfully. His celebration gives way to confusion as he reads the skill's description. He had expected to learn a specific spell like Fireball, not just the general ability to cast low-level fire magic. Deciding to test it anyway, he takes aim at a fish in the water. He strikes a pose, pointing his finger like a gun, and shouts for the Fireball spell to activate. When nothing happens, he wonders if the activation command is unnecessary. He tries again without it, then attempts a different hand gesture, but the spell still fails to manifest. After several more failed attempts from a nearby tree branch, his patience wears thin. He explodes in frustration, furious that he wasted his hard-earned skill points on a seemingly useless skill. Taking a moment to think calmly, he recalls the mole monster's magic manifesting as a black mist. He theorizes that this mist was its magic power and realizes he can't cast his spell because he lacks the short incantation skill. He concludes that he must perform a full spoken chant. Deciding to follow fantasy tropes, he awkwardly clears his throat and begins an incantation. He calls upon the fire spirit, begging it to lend him its power to cast a fireball. His elaborate chant yields no results. He notes that neither pronunciation of fireball he tried worked. Overwhelmed with frustration, he screams, enraged that it still didn't work at all. He grows desperate, trying various incantations, pleading with any spirit that might be listening to grant him fire magic. He even mimics the sound the mole made when it cast its magic. Completely defeated, he gives up on fire magic for the night. He concludes that he probably needs to chant in this world's native language, which he, an outsider, doesn't know. Resigned, he decides to just go to sleep. The next morning, he walks along the river, sighing over his desire for grilled fish and rabbit. He considers trying to start a fire manually, but his thoughts are interrupted. A goblin suddenly appears, and he prepares for another fight. He defeats the goblin with practiced ease. He notes with a sense of relief that he's getting used to combat. Deciding to abandon his attempts at fire magic, he resolves to find a settlement and escape this survival game. Just then, he receives a notification that he has leveled up to 3 and learned the rush skill. He eagerly searches for the new skill in his status. He is thrilled to discover it's a forward charge, exactly the kind of combat ability he's been hoping for. He immediately tries to activate rush while standing still. When it fails, he reasons that it must require movement to activate. He tries again while walking, and this time he lurches forward as the skill engages. He's amazed by the feeling of a true skill. He realizes that since his magic power was consumed, he doesn't need to shout the skill's name. This makes it perfect for surprise attacks. He smirks, noting the only apparent drawback is that the sudden burst of speed makes his shoes fly off. Yudo Mamiya shouts in triumph, having found a perfect place to rest for the night. The spot, nestled in the roots of a large tree, is safe from goblins and has a nearby river and fruit trees. He feels it's a significant improvement over his previous sleeping arrangements and decides he can use it as a base. Settling in, Yudo decides to check his status. He is now level 3, with increased intelligence and agility. He calculates that with his current growth rate, his final stats at the max level of 99 would be around 300. He also realizes that his stats affect his skills, with fire magic based on intelligence and rush on agility. This makes him wonder when he learned the rush skill, as he doesn't recall it. He considers the possibility that he acquired the rush skill from defeating horned rabbits. He lists his other acquired skills and their progress, including gathering, stick techniques, and presence detection. He theorizes that if defeating monsters increases the percentage of other skills, then it would be highly beneficial for him to fight more. Yudo reflects that people in this world likely learn skills that help them in their daily lives, such as cooking, forging, or gathering. The system reminds him of a game he used to be addicted to. In that game, which was mostly about defeating monsters, players could still enjoy other activities like fishing or exploring the scenery. In that game, his dedication to seeking power earned him the #1 rank on all servers and the title God of Cessation. However, this glory was meaningless in the real world, though he admits that it was the most enjoyable time of his life. He realizes this new world is perfectly suited to his tastes, which he finds both thrilling and dangerous. The memories of maxing out his status and completing his weapon collection in the game get him incredibly excited. Yudo quickly composes himself, reminding himself that he shouldn't get so excited, as he is an adult now. For now, he decides to rest and hopes for a good dream. He throws a stone to lure a mole-like creature out of the ground. He quickly strikes the creature down. The strategy is a success, and he is notified that his level has increased to 5. He reflects that his pebble strategy is effective for dealing with the moles. He notes that defeating moles is the best way to earn experience for his earth magic and presence detection skills. He wonders if the goblin he fought that wielded a stick was a rare type of monster. Suddenly, a sound from the trees catches his attention. Startled, Yudo peeks from behind a tree, wondering if it's a goblin or a new monster. He quickly realizes that it was a human voice. Alarmed, he wonders if a woman or a child is under attack. He resolves to check out the disturbance. As he rushes toward the sound, a mole emerges from the ground and he impatiently kicks it aside. His focus shifts as he realizes the significance of a mole appearing from the ground. He finally spots a group of people in the distance. He sees that they are children fleeing in terror. One of them, a blonde-haired boy, turns to face a group of 3 pursuing goblins. Yudo is shocked to see one of the goblins wielding a sword. Though he's been avoiding attacking more than one goblin at a time, he refuses to stand by and watch someone die, so he rushes into the fray. Yudo yells to the blonde boy that he will help, offering to handle 2 of the goblins if the boy can take the last one. Yudo throws a rock toward the goblins, hoping the other boy understands the plan. The blonde boy seems to understand and agrees that he should be fine with some help. Believing victory goes to the one who strikes first, both boys charge toward the goblins simultaneously. Yudo attacks one goblin but misses his initial strike, telling it to stay put. He realizes another goblin is lunging at him from the side. Having grown accustomed to combat, Yudo quickly adapts to the situation. He readies himself to deal with the sword-wielding goblin. He uses an item to create a burst of flame, knocking another one down. The attack injures Yudo, but he grits his teeth and endures the pain. The blonde boy watches in surprise. He is impressed that Yudo managed to kill a goblin on his own. The blonde boy sees that the last goblin is still focused on him and hasn't noticed Yudo. He realizes that at this rate, Yudo will steal the kill. This thought seems to cross Yudo's mind as well. The blonde boy manages to defeat his goblin just as Yudo finishes his. Yudo apologizes, admitting he couldn't let the other boy steal the kill, and is notified that his level has increased to 6. In a world that operates like a video game, the one who deals the final blow receives the reward. The young man reflects on this last-hit system, having just defeated a goblin that the blonde boy identified as a rare sword wielder. He worries that by taking the kill, he might have angered the first local he's met. To his relief, the children he saved don't seem angry at all, but are smiling and talking amongst themselves. However, he quickly realizes he can't understand a word they're saying. He gestures for them to wait a moment, trying to communicate non-verbally. The children nod in confusion. Unable to speak their language, the young man accesses his system menu to learn it. He's initially frustrated when the first level only grants him the comprehension of a 5-year-old. After composing himself, he decides to invest more points. He becomes enraged when the skill only improves to the level of an 8-year-old. His outburst startles the children. Realizing his mistake, he apologizes and decides to spend more points to level up his language skill again. He laments that he has wasted all his free points. Finally able to communicate, he asks them what happened, and the girl confirms he couldn't understand them before. The children are amazed by his sudden ability to speak their language, an act they compare to praying to the goddess outside of a church. He asks where they live. The blonde boy explains they're from Bezart town and were hunting horned rabbits when they encountered goblins after Potter ran too deep into the woods. The children begin to argue amongst themselves about who broke the rules. May claims she ran because she had faith that Zinc could defeat the goblins. Zinc retorts that he would naturally run from a sword-wielding goblin. Watching their rowdy exchange, the young man finds their energy somewhat reassuring. He reflects on his grim situation. While the world seems like a game, he's been fumbling along, constantly aware that one wrong move could mean death. But now, for the first time, he has found company with children from a nearby town. May's concerned voice pulls him from his thoughts, asking if he is okay. He reassures her he's fine. He explains that he was lost and is simply relieved to have found them. He asks Zinc if they can make it back to Bezart town before sunset, and Zinc thinks it's possible if they hurry. Zinc believes they can get out of the forest by sunset, though Potter is clearly exhausted. The young man recalls that Potter was carrying a heavy basket. Seeing that it's getting dark, he offers to use his flashlight to light the way. The modern device leaves May and Zinc completely awestruck. The children marvel at the flashlight, concluding it must be a magic item and that its owner is an aristocrat. The young man cuts their chatter short, urging them to hurry. Zinc confirms he knows the way by using a nearby river as a landmark and suggests they cut through the forest. The group agrees and sets off. His party, consisting of a girl named May, a larger boy named Potter, and a newcomer, decides it's time to move on. A young adventurer named Zinc skillfully hunts a horned rabbit. Afterwards, he stands over a larger horned beast, knife ready. Zinc borrows a sword, explaining he only wants to test its sharpness since they don't have time to collect monster parts or magic stones. The newcomer is unfamiliar with these terms. Potter clarifies that the magic stones in this forest aren't very valuable but are still a good find for beginners like them. Potter assumes the newcomer's ignorance about magic stones means he's a noble. The newcomer corrects them, explaining he's a lower-class corporate slave. The term confuses May, who thinks it sounds impressive. Curious about their dynamic, he asks if the 3 of them are a party. May happily confirms, outlining their roles. Zinc hunts, she gathers, and Potter carries their findings. When the newcomer asks if she's afraid of the monsters, May admits that she is. She explains that she gathers herbs and fruits to sell in town for her family's pharmacy, and the high cost of medicine motivates her to help earn money. He is touched by her determination. His attention is then drawn away as he notices something concerning Potter. Potter struggles to keep up with the group, breathing heavily. He apologizes for being slow. The newcomer asks May if Potter couldn't understand what he said. May explains that Potter has difficulty with language comprehension and plans to pray to the goddess for help with it. The newcomer chuckles at Potter's plan, comparing praying to the goddess to spending skill points. Zinc suddenly gets his attention, telling him to look under a nearby tree, not above it. He taps the tree trunk with his blade, explaining that the vibrations will lure out a sound-sensitive hooly mole if one is nearby. Impressed, the newcomer comments on Zinc's knowledge, which Zinc proudly attributes to his hunter father. When asked if he plans to become an adventurer, Zinc says he'll likely stick to the nearby Rocco Plains for now. He admits there are strong monsters there, but his main concern is for May and Potter's safety. Zinc adds that he needs to get stronger to support his mother. The newcomer reflects on the children's harsh realities, Zinc inheriting a dangerous job, May risking her life, and Potter sacrificing his studies. He realizes that for children his age, such hardships are normal in this world. This makes him reconsider their perception of him as a noble. Zinc realizes they haven't properly introduced themselves yet. The newcomer admits his name slipped out earlier and formally introduces himself as Loki, apologizing for the delay. The children react to his name. As Zinc says Loki, Loki thinks to himself that the name suits him well, but a question hangs in the air: the demon lord Loki. The group's journey is interrupted by a sudden, surprised sound from the forest. His avatar in the game was known as the fearsome god of cessation, Loki. In the game he was obsessed with, that name belonged to the most powerful player. He reveals that this was the name he used for his own avatar. He has no plans to tell the others he came from another world, nor will he show them the status screen he was given. He hadn't considered it necessary to use a fake name. He admits that he gets excited when his stats increase. Furthermore, he confesses his obsession with securing the last hit on enemies. Ever since arriving in this world, he can't help but get excited, which is why he thought the name was suitable. But now that he thinks about it, he finds the name incredibly embarrassing. He looks on in shock, questioning how the situation devolved to this point. The children chatter amongst themselves, concluding he must be a demon lord just like in the stories. Hearing them mention a story, Loki wonders if it means the demon lord doesn't currently exist. He internally questions if the acorn-headed being summoned him here to serve as the demon lord. He quickly dismisses the thought, thinking he's jumping to conclusions. Loki cautiously asks what the story is about. Zinc explains that the story is about defeating the demon lord. The legend speaks of a demon lord, clad in black, who came from the darkness and ruled over all monsters. Opposing him was a hero who descended from the light, illuminating the world with a holy flash. Zinc calls it a heroic tale about a hero named Takuya, and Loki acknowledges that it seems to be a popular story. Loki considers it a common hero and demon lord story, but pauses. The name Takuya gives him a jolt. He asks who Takuya is, and the others are surprised he doesn't know the hero Sama. They explain that the hero came from another world and suddenly defeated the demon lord, which makes Loki think he sounds like a typical overpowered otherworlder. He fumes, angry that the acorn-headed being gave out skills to others, but not to him. He asks if there is anyone else who came from a different world. May wonders aloud if she could meet someone from another world if she went to the royal capital. Zinc angrily retorts that they don't have the money to go there. Suddenly, a mole is spotted in the path ahead. Loki and Zinc quickly coordinate their attack, telling the others to get to safety. As he fights alongside Zinc, Loki finds the sensation of combat to be quite nice. He remembers once finding a party in his game where everyone helped each other according to their roles and had fun together. In contrast, he had always watched from afar, focused only on playing as efficiently as possible. He looks at his current companions and thinks about the idea of friends. Loki wonders what will happen to him in this world. The group makes a frantic escape from the forest. Once clear, they all express their relief at being safe. Noticing Potter struggling, Loki offers to carry the heavy basket for him. Loki takes the basket onto his back. As they crest a hill, they finally see a town on the horizon. May happily welcomes Loki to Bezart town, saying she's glad he accompanied them. A guard at the gate recognizes the children and asks why they were out so late. Loki is stunned by how fast the children run towards the entrance. The guard thanks Loki, explaining that he heard from Zinc that Loki had saved them. Loki modestly claims he was also lost, so they were just helping each other out. Zinc presents the sword that the goblin was using. The guard examines the sword, remarking that it's a fairly new blade in good shape. The guard apologizes for holding him up at the gate and invites him inside. He gestures into the bustling streets, welcoming Loki to Bezart town. Zinc offers the goblin's sword to Loki. Loki tells him to take it, reasoning that Zinc saved him too and the sword is too long for him to use. Zinc protests, saying that wouldn't be fair and that he can't use the sword either. The guard tells the two to stop chatting and continue their talk at the Hunters Guild tomorrow. The guard explains that he needs to report the incident to the guild master and asks Loki to join him. The children thank Loki again, calling him an aristocrat, a demon lord, and their savior. Loki waves back and agrees to see them tomorrow. The children happily run off into the town. Looking at his skills, he realizes he only gained experience from the mole he personally defeated, concluding that getting the last hit is important. Watching the cheerful group, he decides that to seek strength, he must abandon the idea of seeking friends. He laments that he was hoping to play in a party, but it would be impossible to ask them to let him deal the final blow to monsters. He resolves to change his gear now that he has finally arrived in a town. He notes how lively the place is as he walks through the market. His attention is drawn to a vendor selling skewers of meat. He asks the vendor for one and is told it will be 400 beak. He is completely baffled, having no idea what a beak is. Deciding his pride as a 32-year-old doesn't matter, he prepares to take drastic measures. He runs off shouting for Zinc, May, and Potter to please lend him some money. A young man is roused from his sleep by a commotion below. Looking down, he sees a group of familiar faces who are surprised to find him alive and are the cause of the noise. He climbs down, admitting that the previous night had been rough. He recalls how after parting ways with his companions, things took a turn. Without any local currency, he had no choice but to sleep outdoors. His solitary predicament ends when a young girl named May finds him, calling out his name with relief. May gently scolds him for sleeping in a tree where she couldn't find him, offering that he could have stayed with her. He asks where they are going. May excitedly announces they are heading to the Hunters Guild, urging him to hurry as the others are waiting. Upon entering the Hunters Guild, Yudo is taken aback by the grand and bustling hall. Having not eaten in days, Yudo begs Potter for some of his food. He eagerly accepts a meat skewer and devours it with pure delight. An unfamiliar voice comments on his hearty appetite. The new voice startles him. A woman from the guild approaches and informs Loki that the guild master is calling for him. Yudo's mind races with possible reasons for the summons, fearing he's in trouble. The branch manager tells him he can finish eating first, but he hastily agrees to go immediately. Amanda leads him to the guild master's office and announces their arrival. Inside, an older man introduces himself as Yagov, the master of the guild. Yudo introduces himself as Loki and shakes the guild master's hand. Amanda sits next to Yudo, making him uncomfortable. Yagov cuts to the chase, stating he wants to give Loki something. To Yudo's surprise, Yagov presents him with a pile of coins. He explains it's a reward from the mayor for saving the children. Yagov then bows, offering his own thanks on the mayor's behalf. Yudo, flustered but grateful, accepts the money. Yagov then invites Loki to join the Hunters Guild. Yudo hesitates, explaining he doesn't plan to stay long. Yagov reassures him that the guild is an independent organization with reach across countries. Impressed by Yagov's respectful demeanor, Yudo considers the offer. Yagov reveals a keen observation skill, explaining that he can determine a person's origin by the way their mouth moves when they speak. He then looks intently at Loki, stating that the language he speaks is unlike any from the known countries. This revelation makes Yudo nervous. The guild master shifts the topic to two hunters who went missing in the Great Forest Pomera 10 days ago. He mentions one of them had a particular sword refurbished before they left. Yagov then directly asks Yudo what a non-hunter like him was doing in that same forest. Feeling the weight of suspicion, Yudo panics internally. He decides that a bad lie would be worse than the truth. He firmly denies killing the hunters, arguing he wouldn't have come to town if he were guilty. Yudo recounts seeing what looked like a human arm being eaten by a goblin. Yagov accepts this, concluding the hunters are likely dead. Yudo offers to help find their remains for the family. Yagov informs him they had no relatives and tells him to keep the sword. Yagov apologizes, clarifying that he wasn't suspecting him but couldn't ignore the incident. He concludes their meeting by reiterating the invitation to join the guild. He wishes him well with an unnerving smile. Leaving the office, Yudo is left completely baffled by the conversation. He questions Yagov's motives. He is reminded of his old company director. The director was a man who was outwardly kind, but whose eyes held a different, unreadable intention. Yudo concludes that people like Yagov hide their true intentions behind a smile. He decides he doesn't like that type of person, taking back his earlier positive assessment. Back in the office, Yagov admits to Amanda that Yudo is unusually sharp and might be connected to a group known as Those Four. Yagov recalls mysterious relics found 6 years prior: shoes, a glass board, and a watch. He reveals to a shocked Amanda that Loki has a functional watch. He deduces that Loki's nonchalance about the item suggests he is no ordinary boy. Yagov instructs Amanda to monitor Loki's every move cautiously, warning her not to provoke him. Gazing out the window, Yagov reflects on the mystery of the boy who calls himself by a demon lord's name. He hopes that this enigmatic newcomer might bring a much-needed positive change to the stagnant town, thinking to himself, "Please be good to us, Loki." Loki reflects on his decision, thinking that to survive he must join the Hunters Guild. Despite his suspicion of its sketchy leader, he feels confident he can succeed. He remembers being mistaken for a killer, but now feels he can do great things here. His companions approach, eagerly asking how his meeting went. Loki triumphantly reveals a large sum of money to his friends. His companions are awestruck by the sight of so much money. He explains that he received 150,000 beak as a reward from the mayor for saving them. His friends discuss the reward, noting he could have earned more if it were an emergency quest. However, they explain hunters are meant to help others, so the reward was likely for saving the citizens. Loki finds the guild master's actions puzzling. Putting it aside, he decides to treat everyone to skewered meat with his new money. Loki arrives at the guild, wondering where to register. He is greeted by Amanda, the guild receptionist. She is pleased he remembered her name and reintroduces herself, mentioning she holds the third highest position there. Believing it would be beneficial to get on her good side, he agrees to be in her care. Loki enthusiastically asks how to register. As he prepares to write his name, Loki pauses, realizing that using the name Loki will be a point of no return. When Amanda asks if he can write, he confirms and decides to proceed. Amanda informs him that while his card is being prepared, she will explain how the guild works. Amanda explains that while the Hunters Guild is for subjugation quests, lower-rank members often do chores. She tells Loki everyone starts at G rank. Members can only take quests at or below their rank, but with the guild master's permission, they can take one a rank higher. She assures him he should qualify for this, having defeated a sword goblin. Loki asks about the promotion process. Amanda adds that reaching B rank requires a practical exam, while S rank promotion involves an interview with the Grand Master. She clarifies that to rank up, one must contribute to the guild and prove their abilities. Loki is pleased to learn the guild operates on a meritocracy, where hard work leads to appropriate rewards. This is a welcome change from his past experience at a company where hard work only led to more work. He acknowledges that here he'll be risking his life. Just then, Amanda announces his card is ready and hands it to him. Amanda presents Loki with his new G-rank card, officially welcoming him as a hunter. She offers to answer any more questions he might have. Amanda explains that the guild master asked her to take care of him since he's new to town. Loki is surprised to hear this, but finds it helpful. Loki asks for a good hunting spot. Amanda suggests the first layer of the Great Forest Palmera for beginners, but for faster ranking, she recommends Rocco Plains and Lulav Forest. She explains that while the shallow areas of the forest have weak monsters, the deeper parts are full of mysteries. Intrigued, Loki asks to know more about this unknown area. Amanda explains that the first layer of the Great Forest Palmera is unpopular due to troublesome monsters called huli moles. The forest is vast, covering a quarter of the continent, and it is said to take 60 days to reach the second layer. Monster strength is standardized by layer, and legend says only the Birdman tribe has ever reached the fifth layer. Loki is amazed by the scale of the place. Loki finds the concept exciting, comparing it to a final dungeon located near a starter village in a video game. He then shifts to a more serious topic, asking if lower-ranked hunters can hunt higher-ranked monsters even if they can't take the official quests. He clarifies if they would still receive a subjugation reward for doing so. Amanda seems to dislike the question, but confirms they would get rewards. Amanda confirms they would get a reward, but it would be decreased. Loki is thrilled just to know there's no penalty, which makes Amanda deduce his intention to venture into the deeper layers of the forest. Although he denies it, his face gives him away. She sternly reminds him that recklessness is not a virtue for hunters and that life is important. Exhausted by his many questions, Loki thanks Amanda for her time. Amanda directs Loki to the document room for more information. She warns him that the books there are extremely valuable and heavily guarded, and that damaging them could result in becoming a slave for eternity. A nervous Loki thanks her and promises to be careful. Walking away, Loki feels he had a close call, glad he didn't write down his questions. He notices that since paper seems to be a valuable commodity, people use wood blocks instead. His friend approaches, asking if his registration is complete. Loki grins and proudly displays his new hunter card. As the group walks through town, his friend explains they sold their materials for 22,000 beak, splitting it for 5,500 each. The blonde-haired boy says he's going to sell his sword and asks Loki his plans. Loki decides to tag along. He is curious to see the weapon shop. At the weapon shop, the blacksmith appraises the sword and offers 50,000 beak. Loki immediately counters, pleading for 80,000. He argues that the sword was difficult to obtain and they need to split the money 4 ways. The blacksmith stands firm, stating he cannot run his business at a loss and lowers his offer to 40,000. Loki then shrewdly asks if the blacksmith intends to sell the second-hand sword in the outside marketplace. The man confirms this is his plan. Loki points out that similar swords sell for 100,000 beak in the marketplace. He argues that the blacksmith can still profit. The blacksmith raises his offer to 60,000. Loki then reveals that he knows the sword was bought from this very shop 10 days ago. He confidently assures the blacksmith it is of high quality and will sell quickly. Frustrated, the blacksmith asks for Loki's price, who suggests 72,000 beak. When the blacksmith hesitates, Loki threatens to give the sword to his friend Potter instead. Defeated, the blacksmith agrees to buy the sword for 72,000. As the deal is finalized, the exasperated man tells him to name his price from the start, only for Loki to immediately inquire about a knife. A young man prepares for his first hunt, having purchased 2 sets of commoner's clothes and a pair of boots. He also managed to acquire beginner equipment at a discount, spending a total of 50,000 beak. Settling into an inn for the night, he celebrates his smooth start. Realizing it's already noon, he decides it's time to head out. He takes note of the world's customs, such as using bells for time and magic stones for light, feeling excited for what's to come. At the Hunters Guild, a woman compliments the young man's new appearance. He inquires about a request he had made earlier. She informs him that she has secured special permission for him to take on an F-rank quest. However, she sternly reminds him that as a newcomer, he is required to form a party. The young man internally scoffs at the idea of a party, seeing no merit in it for himself. He understands that dividing roles would be more efficient, but his immediate goal is to earn money. He doesn't want to share his rewards or experience, feeling he can explore the Great Pomera forest by himself. Apologizing mentally, he decides to go alone and is spotted by a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper wishes him a safe trip, advising him to return before nightfall. Touched by their concern, the young hunter reflects on their kindness. He confidently assures them he will be fine as he sets off for the forest. He arrives at the first layer of the Great Forest Pomera. He assesses his potential targets, weighing the rewards from various monsters. He decides to simply test his abilities for the day and moves in on his first prey. He strikes down a horned rabbit with a decisive slash. He discovers that his increased level has significantly enhanced his perception, allowing him to see the rabbit's movements with newfound clarity. Realizing the status blessing is more potent than he imagined, he feels much stronger than before. He continues his hunt, easily dispatching another creature. He confidently faces a goblin, believing he can now defeat one without special tools. He skillfully dodges and lands a fatal blow on the monster. The tangible feeling of his own growth exhilarates him, reminding him of the most fun moments of playing a game. Buoyed by his success, he vows to hunt more and ventures deeper into the woods. An hour later, the initial thrill has faded. He is overcome with exhaustion, kneeling over the bodies of his kills. The reality of the situation hits him, and he feels a wave of nausea. The task proves to be tough and grotesque. The grim reality of a hunter's work sets in, as the smell and texture make him nauseous. He recalls that his only reference for dismemberment is a video from a science class. His clumsy attempts only make the scene more grotesque. After a great struggle, he finally extracts a magic stone from a goblin. All that remains is to sever its hand as proof of subjugation. He finds the joint and carefully inserts his blade to complete the task. He grits his teeth, telling himself this is all he has to do. He's frustrated by how much time a single monster has cost him. Covered in blood, he stares at his hands in dismay. He wonders how to clean himself, realizing he took for granted having a river nearby in the past. He bitterly regrets ignoring the woman's words of concern, admitting to himself that his belief in solo efficiency was idiotic. He berates himself for underestimating the life-or-death reality of his new profession. He realizes he first needs to wipe the blood from his hands so his knife won't slip. Shaking off his anger, he resolves to push through and reach his day's target no matter what. He steels himself, determined to show his guts. The receptionist inspects his haul and is impressed by the quantity for a first hunt, conceding that his earlier victory was no fluke. Still, she can't help but comment on his disheveled state. He stands awkwardly, covered in blood and grime. The woman erupts, scolding him for his recklessness, questioning if he has a death wish for going out alone and unprepared. He meekly asks about the necessary equipment for a beginner hunter. She orders him to wash his hands immediately. He reflects that he's being scolded like a child, but acknowledges that he is one right now. A waitress offers him hefty meat skewers, but the memory of his recent ordeal makes him recoil. She tells him he needs to eat to grow, but he has no appetite and just asks for a glass of especially cold water. A waitress brings him the requested glass of ice water. He takes it gratefully, relieved. When she asks if something is on his mind, he dismisses her concern. He sits alone, quietly observing the other patrons in the tavern. His attention is drawn to a man wearing glasses. He recalls hearing that such glasses are a relatively recent invention in this world, only being around for 20 to 30 years. He reflects on how this city seems quite modern despite his limited knowledge of its history. He concludes that since this is not Earth, it makes sense for its technology to develop differently. He muses on the possibility that transmigrators are introducing Earth's culture, potentially revolutionizing this world. Deciding he's not a scientist and it's not his concern, he resolves to focus on his own immediate goals. Back at the guild, the receptionist hands his collection of monster parts from the new hunter to a colleague named Rhodey for processing. Rhodey comments that the boy did a good job extracting the magic stone for a beginner. He then teases the receptionist for worrying too much. He adds that if the new hunter works hard to earn money, the guild profits as well, so they need him to succeed. Meanwhile, the young man sits in the tavern, his mind set on his next objective, earning enough to buy a 550,000 beak short sword. The first layer of the Great Pomera forest is populated by creatures like horned rabbits, goblins, and huli moles. He notes that the Raka Plains have F-rank monsters like air mantises and poison mice, but they look too difficult to handle at his current level. The Lulu forest is even more dangerous, with packs of small wolves and giant orcs, making it a challenge for E-rank hunters far beyond his current capabilities. Loki studies a book, concluding that the monsters in Pomera should be manageable for him. He grows frustrated, wishing the guide included recommended levels to help him plan. He reflects on the difference between this world and a game, where he could take risks without consequence. An off-screen voice calls out to Loki, informing him that the calculations are complete. Rhodey announces the total, impressed with Loki's earnings. Loki is stunned to learn he made nearly 50,000 beak in just half a day. Loki inquires if the quality of the materials impacts their value. Rhodey explains that there are 5 levels of value, and Loki's materials were of high quality. Loki eagerly asks for pointers on how to maintain the quality of the monster materials he gathers. Rhodey kindly advises him that while working hard is good, he shouldn't forget to rest. Amanda chimes in, reinforcing that Loki needs to rest, as she has been worried about him. Loki's thoughts race with ambition. He feels an urgent need to hunt more efficiently and earn enough for proper gear. Amanda gets Loki's attention. She reminds him of her offer to teach him the fundamentals of hunting. She emphasizes that her lesson will be thorough. Visibly intimidated, Loki quickly makes an excuse about needing to go shopping for essentials. Amanda sighs but agrees, telling him to be safe and avoid doing anything reckless. Just as he's about to leave, she stops him, remembering she has something for him. Loki holds the coin and considers that he can check his status at the church. He muses that while he can check his status at any time, he's curious how the process works for others. A boy with spiky hair cheerfully greets Loki, asking if he's done with his hunt. The boy tells Loki he was just about to go shopping. Seeing an opportunity, Loki offers the silver coin to the boy. The boy and his friends are surprised, asking if Loki isn't going to use the free status check himself. The boy reveals he hasn't checked his status in almost 2 years, but still feels hesitant to take the coin for free. Loki makes a proposition. In exchange for the coin, the boy can tell him about the status checking process in Bezart. He plays it off as simple curiosity about whether it's different from other places. The boy explains that a black slate appears, showing one's skills and levels. Loki is surprised by how basic the process sounds. Loki asks if the status check shows any numbers. A girl in the group correctly guesses he means the number of learned skills. She begins to list her own skills aloud, causing Loki to panic and try to stop her. The spiky-haired boy and Loki both warn her that revealing powerful skills publicly can be dangerous. The girl is shocked by the warning and agrees to keep her skills secret from now on. A nun appears and loudly scolds the children for disturbing the peace in front of the church, calling out Ren by name. Ren apologizes to the nun Merisan as she approaches the group. Ren introduces Loki as a new, very strong hunter, explaining what they were discussing. The nun offers her assistance, but Loki politely declines, saying he will ask if he has questions later. The nun compliments Loki on his good manners, and he responds with a practiced smile, thanking her. She pats his head and reminds him that the goddess will always watch over his daily conduct. She encourages him to remember the path of virtue to be blessed by the goddess. Loki privately dismisses the idea of a goddess watching over him, thinking instead of the acorn-headed being. He concedes that daily activities can provide experience, but maintains that hunting is the fastest way to acquire new skills. He announces that he is leaving to go shopping. He explains he needs to hurry so he won't be late for dinner. The children wave him off. Loki waves back as he departs. Loki returns to his room, letting out a sigh of exhaustion. He sits down, feeling that he won't be able to eat meat for a while, and is glad that dinner is fish. He grapples with the harsh reality that hunting monsters means killing, a bloody and nauseating business unlike any game. The lantern's clink solidifies his thought: this world is undoubtedly real. He looks at the lantern and addresses the acorn-headed entity in his mind. He remembers being told to be grateful because the item was handmade, and now he finally understands the sentiment. Loki connects the nun's sermon about virtue with the game-like mechanics of gaining experience and leveling up. He realizes the reason others aren't fixated on the last hit is that they don't need to be to make a living. He looks over at the other children, aware that he possesses crucial knowledge that they lack. His own skill list is far more detailed, showing progress bars and even skills he has yet to learn. He acknowledges that his ability to see these numbers is a powerful cheat skill, far beyond a normal status check. He admits that this unique advantage is the reason he can't stop treating this world like a game. He reflects on how he ignores the concerns of others. He admits to himself that he is even considering using the children for his own benefit. This is a stark contrast to the person he was in his original world. The reason for this change is the undeniable fact that in this world, his efforts to get stronger actually pay off. He recalls a time when he couldn't control his desire for strength. A painful memory of being bullied surfaces, and he knows he doesn't want to relive that experience. Fearing he will become corrupted, he calls out to the entity that brought him here. He desperately asks if it can return him to his original world, believing it's not too late to change his path. Suddenly, the room is plunged into pitch blackness. The light has gone out. His thoughts turn to a demon lord stained in darkness. He recalls the story of demon lord Loki, an entity he learned about because they share the same name. He grimly concludes that he is not suited to be a hero, and fears he might become the very demon lord he's thinking of. Frustrated by the entity's silence, Loki decides that he will do whatever he wants. He doesn't understand why he was thrown into this world, but he resolves to live for himself. He briefly considers telling Zinc and the others the truth, but remains undecided. Loki's body feels heavy and his feet ache from overexertion. He grimaces in pain, realizing it was reckless to push his young, 14-year-old body so hard. After being sent to this new world, Loki hasn't received any messages or orders from the acorn-headed entity. Left to his own devices, he's identified a major problem. Since there's no stamina value in his status to improve, he has taken up jogging for the past 3 days to train his body directly. While out for some light training, Loki notices a commotion. He realizes someone is being attacked again. Upon seeing a person fall, he is shocked. He doesn't hesitate, immediately rushing forward with the intent to save them. Loki arrives at the scene, only to find a woman single-handedly fending off the attackers with a rolling pin. He approaches and asks if she is all right. The woman cheerfully thanks him for his kind concern, assuring him that they are perfectly fine. The man at the counter notes that Loki is back rather early. Loki explains that he simply reached his quota for the day. The man is impressed, remarking that the rumors about Loki's talent aren't false. Loki admits that while he doesn't want to stand out, the rumors trouble him. He reveals he needs to earn around 1.5 million beak for weapons and armor to venture into the Raka Plains. The guild master advises him to give up on not standing out, explaining that most hunters in town are just selling materials as a side hustle. This revelation makes Loki understand the earlier incident with the woman. The guild master explains that consistently delivering monster materials will make him valued by the guild. Loki concedes that it can't be helped if it's connected to a rank increase. The man expresses his concern about seeing Loki carry his gold coin rewards and informs him that he can keep his money safely in the guild. Loki is shocked by this crucial piece of information. He wonders why Amanda-san never told him. He had been worried about being robbed after accumulating 1.5 million beak. After depositing his funds, he stares at his empty money pouch, comically wondering if his zero balance is a bug. While walking through town, Loki bumps into a man who apologizes. He notices the man just exited a fancy-looking store. Curious, he peers inside and sees it's a jewel store. As he enters, a woman in elegant black robes welcomes him. The shopkeeper asks if he's there to buy or sell magic stones. Loki is stunned to learn that all the gems on display are magic stones. Seeing his surprise, the woman notes his unfamiliarity with them. She kindly offers to explain what they are. The woman explains that magic stones have different attributes depending on their color. Black means null attribute, red means fire, and so on. Loki is thrilled by the confirmation that magic stones with attributes exist. She clarifies that null attribute stones are sufficient for everyday life and then asks him what large, colored magic stones might be used for. This leads him to a sudden realization. The shopkeeper confirms his suspicion. Magic stones can be used to enchant equipment with attributes. The possibility of wielding 2 swords with different elements fills Loki with excitement. However, his excitement is tempered by the sobering thought that magic stones are likely far too expensive for a beginner hunter. He is shocked to see a small stone priced at 50,000 beak, especially when a Huli Mole's magic stone is only worth 2,000. The shopkeeper explains that this particular stone is an earth attribute, which is unpopular as it's mainly used for construction. She tells the future hunter Kun to come again when he has enough money. He already needed a lot of money just for basic equipment, and now the discovery of attribute weapons has increased his financial needs. With his mind full of new possibilities, he decides it's time for dinner. As he walks, a captivating smell hits him. He follows the scent with a sense of urgency, wondering if it could be what he thinks it is. He bursts through the door of a small establishment, certain he has found the source. A man in a turban asks if he knows about curry. Loki's face lights up with recognition. The man warns him that one needs resolution to eat at his establishment. His only menu item is curry, an ultimate dish of spices, for 9,000 beak per portion. Though he finds it expensive, Loki's body desires the meal intensely. He declares that he will pay and eagerly asks for a serving. The shopkeeper smiles and Loki gazes at the steaming bowl, certain that it is, without a doubt, curry. The taste is nostalgic, reminding him of the lunches he often ate at work. He takes his first bite and is hit by an intense, painful spiciness. Yet beneath the heat, he discovers a profound and delicious flavor. He finds he can't stop eating. After finishing the entire meal, he thanks the owner for the food and leaves, completely satisfied. Loki leaves the restaurant thinking about the 9,000 beak he just spent right after deciding to save 1.5 million. He decides it was worth it, but the familiar taste makes him wonder if there are other people from Earth in this world. The sign outside the shop reveals the curry cost a staggering 9,000 beak per portion, a price he considers crazy expensive. He resolves to be more cautious about entering shops carelessly from now on. Despite the cost, he can't help but remember how delicious the curry was. A woman warmly greets Loki, introducing herself as Mesa's mother and thanking him for his help. Loki connects the dots, realizing that since these are Mesa's parents, their establishment must be a pharmacy. Loki thinks he's seen Mesa's mother before, and she confirms she spends a lot of time in the forest. Mesa appears full of energy and invites Loki to play by the river tomorrow. She grabs him, excitedly describing how much fun they'll have catching fish. She announces she will invite Potter and Zink too, then speeds away. Mesa's mother apologizes for her daughter's whirlwind-like entrance and exit. Mesa's parents apologize for the sudden invitation and ask if Loki would be willing to go with Mesa. Despite his own plans, Loki thinks that going with the three of them would be enjoyable. Mesa's mother gratefully thanks him, confident that the children will be safe in his care. He reflects that while he has a special skill, he considers Zink to be stronger and more reliable than himself. Mesa's mother presents Loki with a small bottle. He curiously accepts it, asking what it is. She explains that it's a medicine to help recover from fatigue and muscle pain. Overjoyed, Loki thanks her and asks about the cost. She tells him not to worry about payment, as it's a thank you gift for saving Mesa. Loki strongly insists that he should pay for the item. Her clouded expression leads him to a brief, incorrect assumption. Mesa's mother explains that medicines are expensive and she can't let him pay such a large sum for what was just a leftover. Loki realizes she meant the medicine was valuable, and he becomes excited about its potential effects, comparing it to the expensive curry. Before leaving, he also inquires about medicine for stomach pain. He thanks her for the medicine and says he'll come back if it proves effective. Outside, Zink spots Loki and waves him over. Mesa is incredibly pumped up for their trip, urging everyone to get going. As they walk, Zink notes that Loki also bought a fishing rod, to which Loki replies he got the cheapest one. Zink directs the others to put the rods in Potter's basket, stating that he and Loki will act as lookouts. As they venture into the wilderness, Loki wonders how long their journey will take. Zink guesses it will take around 2 hours, much to Loki's surprise. The thought of walking for 2 hours simply to play astounds Loki. He concludes that this world is seriously wild. Loki takes a moment to breathe in the fresh forest air. Zink calls for a lunch break, but Loki is disappointed with his lack of a catch. Loki soaks in the peaceful scenery as the group fishes by the river. Mesa happily declares that Potter brought his mother's lunch and will share his fish so they can all eat together. Zink good-naturedly ribs Loki for being bad at fishing. Mesa mentions that her mother packed a magic tool for igniting fire. Loki examines the device, explaining its function in modern terms. Zink shows him how to operate it, and the resulting flame fascinates Loki. Loki is thrilled by how convenient the magic tool is. He enthusiastically starts grilling the fish, while Zink remarks that he can't tell if Loki is knowledgeable or not. Everyone enjoys the delicious grilled fish around the campfire. Zink is shocked to see that the other food item is a pile of insects. Loki recommends the insects, saying they are delicious with salt, while Potter and Mesa munch away. To Zink's surprise, the insects are delicious, and everyone agrees. Feeling refreshed after lunch, they decide to have a team battle to catch more. Loki suggests they use a convenient game called Rock, Paper, Scissors to decide the teams. His friend's bewildered reaction to the simple game is refreshing to him. Zink and Mesa are fired up for the competition, while Potter seems more hesitant. Loki, teamed with Potter, worries about how to communicate with him effectively. He decides to use gestures, indicating that Potter should move the rocks so he can grab the insects. Potter understands the gestures and agrees to the plan. The two work in perfect sync, quickly moving from one rock to the next. Their teamwork proves to be highly effective. Loki gets a bit carried away and worries that he's overdoing it. He apologizes and suggests they slow down, but Potter reassures him that he's not tired. Loki tells Potter not to force himself, and Potter quietly acknowledges him. Visibly moved, Potter declares that he can understand Loki's words. An overjoyed Potter grabs Loki, exclaiming that he can now talk with him. Zinc and Mesa are amazed to hear that Potter can understand Loki. Loki is bewildered, wondering if Potter's foreign language skill increased just by talking to him. Zinc congratulates Potter, telling him it's a result of his own efforts. Loki suggests they celebrate at a store he knows. He leads the group to the curry restaurant. The celebration is a spicy one, with Potter and Mesa looking overwhelmed by the curry's heat. Loki wakes up feeling much lighter than the previous day. He credits the expensive medicine and decides he needs to ask about its price next time. Thanks to his recent reward, he has accomplished his goal of saving 1.5 million beak. He checks his status and finds that his charge and presence detection abilities have both reached level 3. Amanda appears out of nowhere, yelling and demanding to know why he hasn't visited. Loki thinks to himself that keeping his money in the guild is a good idea. He asks if something has happened, confused by her outburst. Amanda cheerfully announces that his promotion to F rank has been approved. She complains that he has been away for 6 days, prompting a sheepish apology from Loki. She notes that his timing is perfect and asks if he needs to make a withdrawal. With new resolve, Loki states his intention to sort his equipment and take on the Raka Plains. Amanda enthusiastically congratulates Loki on his promotion to F rank. Loki, however, is more concerned with his new license card, wondering if he can change its material. Amanda confirms that it's possible. Amanda explains that the card's material corresponds to various mineral ranks, such as copper, iron, silver, and gold. When Loki asks why the material change is arbitrary, Amanda explains the reasoning. She cheerfully adds that changing the card's material will cost an extra processing fee. Loki is horrified by this revelation, shouting out in disbelief that it's like a microtransaction. Amanda justifies the cost by explaining that the guild is a business and that only high rankers who are typically wealthy would care about their card's quality. A thought occurs to Loki, and he calls out to Amanda to ask a question. He asks her if S rank is truly the highest rank available. Amanda asks what makes him question the ranking system. Loki explains that having adamant as the highest rank feels a bit underwhelming. Impressed by his astuteness, Amanda acknowledges that he is quite sharp. She confirms his suspicion, explaining that a higher rank once existed but has since disappeared because no modern hunters are capable of reaching it. Amanda explains that she didn't think it was necessary to tell him about the lost rank. Loki, however, focuses on her phrasing of hunters nowadays, deducing that it implies non-hunters could potentially become one. His mind drifts to the possibility of a powerful reincarnated cheat hero existing in this world. Loki imagines this hero being reincarnated as a prince, surrounded by followers, and laments the gap between their potential circumstances. He resolves that he wants to meet this person if they are still alive. His thoughts are interrupted by Amanda, who, adopting a dramatic persona, offers to tell him about the lost rank since he asked. Amanda becomes intensely enthusiastic, thrilled to have found a sharp kid to tell the legend of the lost rank. Recognizing her overly dramatic presenter mode, Loki panics and tries to escape, insisting he's fine for now. Having escaped Amanda's intense pressure, Loki refocuses on his immediate goal. He decides he needs to prepare to go to the Raka Plains. He mentally lists his to-do items, buying supplies, antidotes, and gathering information. The final step is to buy a weapon and armor from Paisasan's store, after which he'll be off to the Raka Plains. The blacksmith sternly revises his estimate to 5 days. At the store, the blacksmith Paisasan tells Loki that while leather is in stock, armor would take 4 days. Loki despairs at the unexpected delay, asking if the blacksmith has gone crazy. Loki protests, explaining he planned to reach the plains today and asks if he can just get existing armor. Paisasan scolds him, explaining that ill-fitting armor is a life-and-death matter in combat. He adds that he wouldn't have child-sized armor ready anyway. He tells Loki to come get measured, after which he can look at some weapons. Loki miscalculated and resigns himself to going to the plains without armor, deciding to just scout the area. However, he spots a sword in a case and excitedly asks Paisasan to take it out. Paisasan looks at the sword Loki is pointing to. He agrees to take it out for him. Loki is thrilled to find the sword is the right size and within his budget. Loki realizes the sword is cheap because it's enchanted with maximum magic power increase, which is why no one wants to buy it. Magic power enchantments are usually placed on staves, and in a town with only E-rank hunters, no one wants to buy such a specialized sword. Loki asks why he made it, knowing it wouldn't sell. Apologetically, Loki explains that he heard from the lady in the jewel store that Paisa-san could do enchantments. The lady from the jewel store, Mizzle, reacts with exasperation. Loki puzzles over why Paisa-san would create a sword he knew no one would want. He mumbles through possibilities, wondering if it was a prototype or a present. With a pained expression, Paisa-san quietly reveals that he created the sword for his son. Loki is stunned by the revelation and blurts out a question about the son. He immediately covers his mouth, realizing his blunder. He mentally scolds himself for not reading the room and missing the obvious clues. After Loki apologizes, Paisa-san tells him not to worry, saying his own son would have been just as excited at his age. Paisa-san then asks if, knowing it's a memento, Loki is still going to buy the sword. Paisa-san explains that he put the sword in the showcase because he wants to sell it, believing his son would be happier that way. With renewed determination, Loki declares that he will buy it. The blacksmith's tone then shifts, seriously questioning Loki's plan to venture into the Rocker Plains without wearing armor. Loki is visibly shaken by the blacksmith's intensity. Feeling he can't lie, Loki prepares to answer honestly. He confirms that he is indeed planning to go without armor. He justifies his confidence by explaining that the experience he's gained has already hit its limit, indicating he's strong enough. Therefore, he believes he should be able to fight against the F-tier monsters in the Rocker Plains as long as he is careful. Paisa-san threatens to not sell him the sword until the armor is finished. Loki knows that a normal person would probably wait for the armor to be finished. However, he reflects on his own unique and rapid leveling method, which has made him stronger than anyone else, and feels he cannot wait. Loki firmly states that he cannot wait 4 days because he needs to know what the new hunting spot is like, and he will go even if he can only scout the area. Paisa-san listens with a stern expression. Loki stares back, his resolve unwavering. With a weary sigh, Paisa-san asks why Loki is saying the same thing his son did. He painfully recounts that while he was putting his heart into creating the sword, his son died. He then tells Loki to wait there and walks away. Paisa-san returns with a set of armor and remarks that it fits Loki perfectly, just as he thought. Loki realizes with a start that this must be his son's armor. Paisa-san explains that the armor can defend against an air mantis's wind magic, preventing a gruesome death. He then tells Loki to go ahead and die wearing the armor, and he will go after him and kill him once more. Loki, rather than being scared, finds the morbid threat terrifyingly motivating. Paisa-san directs Loki to practice ground behind the shop and tells him to try swinging the sword. As he gets a feel for the weapon, Loki asks Paisa-san if he has been waiting for someone to pick up this sword. He continues his thought, believing Paisa-san was waiting for someone who reminds him of his son. Paisa-san asks for his opinion, and Loki replies that the sword is light, easy to use and really nice. He thanks the blacksmith sincerely and promises that he won't die. Loki, now equipped with a new sword and armor filled with the blacksmith's sentiment, feels ready to finally move beyond the tutorial area. He feels as though he can finally progress in this world. He then turns his thoughts to the cost of his new gear. Loki insists on paying for the gear, but the blacksmith refuses. The blacksmith yells that the gear wasn't for sale and he won't take any money, while Loki argues back that he has the money to pay. Their shouting match can be heard from outside the shop. Walking away from the shop, Loki grumbles about the stubborn blacksmith, having only paid for the sword. He feels conflicted about the extra money he has left over, but accepts a gift from another villager. He announces to himself that he has arrived. With his preparations complete, he heads towards his final stop, the church. He thinks about how he's never entered the church before, despite having spoken to someone from there. Inside the church, Loki marvels at the statues of goddesses. A nun greets him warmly, calling him Loki and commenting on his distinguished appearance. He observes a person kneeling in prayer and asks the nun about the practice. Loki watches as another person gives an offering to have their status checked. He is shocked to see that the status is displayed on a stone slab, completely visible to anyone nearby. He thinks it's convenient that he can check his own status. He quietly asks the nun if the quality of the status check depends on the size of the offering. The nun is horrified and scolds him, saying such a question is asking for punishment. Loki thinks to himself that her anger is understandable. The nun explains that significant contributions to the church could lead to invitations from the Fanmal Empire's central authority. However, she laughs it off, saying it's nothing to do with them in the countryside. Loki is impressed by the church's financial power. He thinks the donation money is likely used for the church's operating costs. The nun asks why he is here, and Loki announces that he has gathered an offering of 500,000 beak. Loki reveals his purpose for visiting the church is to undergo a class selection. He hadn't expected to get a class from praying, but figures he has to use whatever is available. The nun explains this is a form of divine protection from the goddesses and advises him to pray earnestly for the class he desires. Loki is intrigued by the idea of divine protection. The nun explains that divine protection brings many blessings, such as increasing related skill levels, boosting experience gain, and granting a unique class skill. Loki tries to process this new RPG-like element, reminding himself that this is reality. He compares the concept to a growth bonus from a game. He asks if classes have ranks, and the nun confirms that he already knows. The nun mentions she has only ever seen beginner and intermediate rank classes. However, she reveals the existence of a special class. This class can only be determined through a divine revelation by the old priest. She explains those are the only types of classes found in this town. The nun then leaves to call the old priest. Excited, Loki presses for more information, but she cautions him not to use such a strong term so casually. A woman informs the priest that someone wants to do a class selection. The priest, Trail, confirms that he can still receive a divine revelation. Trail introduces himself to Loki and compliments him on his impressive demeanor for his age. Loki gulps, realizing who this person is. He is standing before Trail, a holder of the special priest class. Loki observes that the priest seems unremarkable and has a relaxing presence. He internally speculates about the limits of the divine revelation skill and assumes special classes have more unique skills. He asks if he can still receive divine protection despite his ignorance. Trail reassures him kindly, telling him not to let shame over ignorance stop him from moving forward. The priest names the goddess of fertility, Felin Sama. Next is the goddess of war, Regal Sama. Then the goddess of sin, Rhea Sama. And the goddess of commerce, List Sama. The priest explains that the 6 goddesses love all humans, but Loki notes that the acorn head god is not included. Loki asks if only 6 goddesses are worshipped, and the priest confirms that it is said there are only 6 in this world. The acorn head god seems to have anticipated this question. Loki asks if he should choose a specific goddess to pray to, noting that the other god is not a goddess. The priest advises him to pray to all of them, as he might receive an unexpected class. He instructs Loki to kneel and concentrate on the class he desires so the divine revelation can begin. Loki thinks that he is truly relying on the gods for this. He prays to the gods and goddesses to grant him his desired class. He focuses his thoughts on attaining a class with strong growth in both strength and defense, excelling in close combat. As he concentrates, he senses an unexpected presence. During his prayer, Loki hears faint voices calling to him and telling him to prepare, wondering if the goddesses are speaking. A moment later, a new, clear voice instructs him to open his eyes. When Loki opens his eyes, he is no longer in the church but in a strange, ethereal field where 3 unknown women stand before him. He realizes the voice that spoke to him was not the priest's, but someone much younger. One of the mysterious women steps forward and directly asks Loki who he is. Confused, Loki wonders where he is and if these women are the goddesses. One of the women silences him, demanding he answer their question. She then violently slams him to the ground. One of the women states that she doesn't care. Another woman declares Loki an anomaly in this world, while the one with short black hair reaches a hand toward him. The woman with short, dark hair looms over a struggling Loki, her eyes wide with unnerving intensity as she declares her intention to erase him. A man is pinned to the ground in agony as a voice calls out to Rhea to stop. A woman with pink hair argues that while he is an anomaly, they haven't listened to his story. The man lets out a pained cry. A pink-haired woman acknowledges the man's confusion, but asks him to explain who he is and why he's in this world. Realizing a wrong move could be fatal, he wonders if he's being questioned because he's an otherworlder. He introduces himself as Loki, explaining his former name was Mamiya Yuudo and that he was kidnapped before ending up in a strange space. The armored goddess, Regal, speculates he was swallowed by a dimensional gap, which would explain his ignorance. Loki is frustrated that he was physically unable to speak about the acorn-head figure who brought him to this world. The dark-haired woman mentions to Regal that she couldn't read his mind at times, and Regal confirms she experienced the same. Loki realizes they couldn't read his mind and hopes they now understand he isn't lying. One of the goddesses says she believes Loki's story about being brought to a white space. Regal adds that their divine eyes couldn't see his skills, questioning if he even possesses any. The dark-haired woman concludes that he is either using an unknown power or is simply very dangerous. The goddesses deliberate over Loki's fate, considering him too dangerous to live and suggesting they consult a higher power named Furza. Loki desperately pleads for them to listen, insisting he knows nothing. He is coldly silenced and called an anomaly. Pushed to his limit, Loki furiously lashes out at the goddesses, questioning if all divine beings are self-centered, incompetent, and arbitrary. Enraged by his words, Regal declares his crime deserves 1,000 deaths. Loki fires back that he tried to be respectful, but they never even tried to listen to him. Rhea suggests simply killing him to avoid collateral damage, but another goddess pleads with her to stop. Loki accuses the goddesses of being no different from criminals, caring only for their own convenience. He recounts his traumatic arrival, being kidnapped from his world and thrown into a forest, forced to treat his desperate fight for survival as a game just to stay sane. He describes his struggle for survival, lacking knowledge, food, and water, forced to fight monsters and eat raw fish until he finally met people. He had thought he could finally enjoy this new world and live properly. Tears streaming down his face, Loki desperately asks why they would treat him this way after he fought so hard to survive. He explains that even though his own parents had disowned him, the people of this world accepted him, making him genuinely happy. Believing his end has come, he laments breaking a promise to someone named Paisasan not to die. He wistfully wishes that if reincarnation is real, he could be reborn into a world like this where effort is rewarded. Moved by his plea, the goddess Alicia asks him who he really is. Loki replies that he is not a god, but simply a man who clings to life and has finally begun to find joy in this world. Alicia decides to confirm one last thing with him. She asks if he was bestowed any skills before arriving in their world. She explains that goddesses sometimes reincarnate souls from other worlds and grant them special skills, wondering if this happened to him. After a moment of confusion, Loki seems to understand what she means. Loki explains he received 2 abilities. The first is youth restoration, which makes him look young despite being 32, and the second is a status screen showing his stats. He adds that there are 2 hidden fields on his screen, so he isn't sure if they count as skills. After he describes it, Rhea confirms to Regal that he is telling the truth. Loki describes his status screen, comparing it to video games from his world, complete with stats, titles, and a detailed skill tree. The goddesses are stunned, realizing his ability is superior to their divine eyes, and wonder if it was set up by Furza-sama. He further explains that unlike the local method of prayer, his system allows him to allocate skill points himself. Alicia concludes that a higher-ranking god must be involved in his summoning. Loki wonders if the Furza they mentioned is their superior. He believes they should now understand he only has a status screen, not a cheat skill. Alicia reads his thoughts, agreeing that the skill doesn't seem to threaten the world, which startles Loki. The goddesses concede they were partly at fault for his behavior. This prompts another outburst from Loki, who reminds them that they tried to kill him without any explanation or introduction. To Loki's surprise, the 3 goddesses bow deeply and apologize sincerely. He accepts, also apologizing for his harsh words. He then begins to explain why he originally came to the church. Loki asks why he can't choose a class. Regal explains that as lesser goddesses, they can only grant blessings to those born in their world. When he asks if they can send him home, she regretfully admits they lack that power as well. Alicia earnestly tells Loki that since they now understand his situation, it's their duty to guide him. Loki realizes he's been so desperate he hadn't noticed that Alicia was the only one who tried to listen to his story. Looking at her properly for the first time, he is suddenly struck by how cute she is. His sudden thought leaves Alicia completely flustered. Alicia offers to guide Loki, and he is suddenly granted the divine revelation skill, allowing him to receive messages from the goddesses. He worries about being constantly monitored, but Alicia clarifies that the communication is one way from them to him. She reassures him they can only perceive people near their statues and invites him to visit a church if he needs help, an idea Loki internally dismisses. Realizing the limitation of the one-way skill, Alicia decides to bestow celestial channeling upon him, a skill normally exclusive to shrine maidens. She explains it will take nearly all her power, after which she will need to rest. Exasperated, Loki shouts, questioning if gods and goddesses understand the meaning of consent. Loki wakes in his room, confirming the encounter was not a dream and that he has gained 2 new skills. He notes that he still cannot obtain new classes or blessings. He decides to be positive, feeling this is the true start of his new life now that he can communicate with the goddesses. Concerned for Alicia's condition, he decides to try the new skill right away. Upon activating the skill, Loki is overwhelmed by the cacophony of goddesses arguing over who gets to speak with him. Amidst the chaos, one introduces herself as Firil, the goddess of life, while Loki tries to ask about Alicia's well-being. He realizes the special skill can only be used once a day and costs 50 MP. He furiously throws his book, declaring it a trash skill. He fumes about how useless the goddesses are in his situation. After his outburst, he tries to force himself to think positively, noting he simply didn't get useful information today. He now knows about the existence of lower-ranked goddesses and a high-ranked god who manage this world. He decides that from this day on, he will live his own way, questioning if this is still part of the Acorn-Head god's plan. He wonders about the higher god Furza, and resolves that he will not be a pawn in any god's plan. Loki recalls his past struggles and the overwhelming experience of gaining a skill to communicate with goddesses. The skill turned out to be a chaotic mess of one-sided chatter. A new chapter begins, titled Toward a New Hunting Ground. Loki announces his plan to hunt on the Rocker's Plains. The shopkeeper notes his diligence, but expresses concern about his tired appearance. Loki dismisses the worry, declaring he will simply shake off his fatigue. He internally fumes that he can't just shake it off, as his precious time was wasted. His visit to the church was a disaster. He couldn't choose a new job, argued about offerings, and felt guilty about someone named Trailsand's kindness. He blames the goddesses for the whole mess. Loki continues walking through the town, lost in thought. He makes his way through the bustling town market, passing by wagons and stalls. Loki observes the lively market near the north gate on his way to the Rocker's Plains. He notes it has more stalls and people than the south gate, and truly feels like a fantasy world. He spots a party of adventurers heading out and decides to follow them. Upon arriving at the vast Rocker's Plains, Loki sees that no one else is hunting solo. He thinks the open scenery is good for spotting monsters, but also worries that his basket could be easily stolen. Ready for action, he prepares for his first hunt. He spots something rustling in the grass and sets down his basket. He comes face to face with an air mantis and decides to test the waters. Loki notes that the creature's natural coloring makes it difficult to see in the tall grass. He focuses, ready to make his move. Loki activates his Detect Presence skill to pinpoint the mantis's location. Once he has a lock, he uses Charge and rushes forward, successfully slicing the creature in half. His next opponent is a poison mouse, which he plans to finish off quickly. However, he's shocked by how slow the creature is. His charge is too fast to stop. He ends up messily running it through. After the clumsy kill, Loki is surprised to see he's acquired Poison Resistance Level 1. The skill immediately jumps to Level 2. Realizing he needs more information after just one kill, he decides to test this further. He concludes that the poison mouse is an excellent target for hunting. Loki brings 21 poison mice to a material shop, where the shopkeeper informs him that one is unsalvageable but the rest are A-grade. Loki admits it was his first one, and he missed his aim because it was slower than he expected. The shopkeeper asks if he's planning to take on Lulav Forest solo as well. Loki internally considers it, thinking that if the air mantis wasn't a challenge, perhaps he overtrained in Palmyra and should head to Lulav early. However, he quickly dismisses the idea, recognizing that overconfidence is a trap. He knows that many people fall into that trap, recklessly charging tough enemies and losing everything. He tells the shopkeeper he will stay in Rocker's Plains until he's confident in his strength, which pleases the man. Loki realizes the shopkeeper was testing him, as the man explains that the difficulty in Lulav spikes dramatically. The shopkeeper explains that soloing in Lulav isn't very profitable. Loki acknowledges that he is aware of the material weight issue. The most profitable material, orc meat, is too heavy to carry alone in large quantities. Loki says he'll think about it when the time comes. The man hands him his payment and tells him to endure the receptionist's lectures. The receptionist calls for a party member to collect their payment. Loki recognizes the party he followed earlier. He overhears them discussing their earnings of 41,400 beak each and their plans to rest and shop. Loki finds observing them educational, noting that while he could live on 5,000 beak a day, the local standard seems to be around 10,000. Loki considers joining a party, but decides it's not a viable option for him. He would need a porter who could keep up with his fast-paced hunting style. He realizes the biggest obstacle is a difference in goals, as his sole focus is pursuing power to its absolute limit. His thoughts are interrupted when a woman's voice calls his name. Elsewhere, a group of adventurers discusses forming a party. A woman points out Loki, identifying him as a promising rookie. A man with light hair looks on, contemplating the idea. 4 days later, Loki is back in the plains, analyzing his progress. He has realized that the skill experience he earns is based on the monster's own skill level, which is why his poison resistance leveled so quickly. Defeating a poison mouse gives his level 3 poison resistance the same 20% XP that defeating a Palmera monster gave his level 0 charge skill. He deduces that the poison mouse likely has a high-level resistance skill, making the environment different from Palmera. He concludes that hunting monsters with high-level skills will be more efficient and sets a goal to get his poison resistance to at least level 6 before going to Lulav. However, he's discovered that fixed-point hunting isn't feasible here. He learned that the poison mice are cannibals. This forces him to keep his basket of kills with him at all times. The exhausting 2-hour round trip to town is not an efficient option for storing materials. As an efficiency enthusiast, Loki wants to hunt them all in one area. He wishes for a tall platform to store his basket safely out of the monster's reach. He considers piling dirt with a shovel before remembering he learned earth magic. He jokingly tries an incantation for the ground to rise. To his shock, a small mound of earth actually appears at his feet. Checking his status, he sees his mana has decreased, confirming a spell was activated. This was something he was never able to do with fire magic. He tries again, this time with intent. He is stunned that the spell actually worked. He realizes the trigger for the magic must be his feet, not his hands like when he tried before. Eager to test this absurd new development, he prepares for more tests. He commands the ground to rise more, creating a larger mound. However, he notes it's still not tall enough to be safe from monsters. He begins experimenting with customizing the shape, noting the high mana cost. His attempt to create many pillars results in short, useless ones. An attempt to create a single long, thick pillar fails to activate it all. He deduces that the incantation must be the key to controlling the magic. He figures out that he can combine certain keywords that are within the limits of his earth magic skill. Focusing his intent, he successfully casts a spell to create a long pillar. Loki celebrates his success, realizing he's figured out how magic works in this world and can now do fixed-point hunting as much as he wants. His excitement is short-lived, however, as he stares at the tall pillar and wonders how he's supposed to get his basket up there. A young adventurer celebrates the success of his fixed-point hunting, proudly displaying a basket overflowing with his catch. He had some trouble getting his basket down from a high place. He reflects on his past self-struggles, now understanding that magic comes from his feet, and smugly practices his newfound fire magic. To his shock, the fire magic actually works. His celebration is cut short when another adventurer startles him. The man asks if his shouting is the reason he's still alone, mentioning that people have been talking about a rookie who always works by himself. The man introduces himself as Adant, and flanked by his 2 companions, offers the rookie a spot in his party, calling it a lucky break. The young adventurer, however, bluntly refuses the offer. Adant is outraged by the rejection, insisting that party hunting is the proper way to do things. His companions chime in, warning that cocky brats are the most likely to die and that he should rely on his seniors. They threaten to report him to the guild, but the rookie calmly states he is fully prepared to go solo. Later, a guild receptionist tells the young adventurer that Adant's party was obviously after his strength or rewards and likely tried to recruit him before anyone else could. She expresses her relief that he turned them down. She explains that as a staff member, she can only go as far as warning them, which he agrees is a great help. He notes that the guild expects adventurers to handle such issues themselves and that it would be troublesome if they used force. He is concerned that a dispute with locals could make his life difficult. After checking his status, he sees he's only reached level 9 after 4 days. He decides he needs to reach at least level 11 to avoid having to retreat to Palmera just to get away from the troublesome party. Hoping the situation doesn't escalate, he heads to the guild. He's excited to see his first emergency quest. The reward for poison mouse extermination has been increased. The quest is due to a potential outbreak, and he immediately realizes his own prolific hunting is likely the cause. As the young adventurer leaves, Adam's party watches him from a doorway. They begin to follow him out of town. Noticing his pursuers, he quickly ducks into the tall grass to hide. The chase wears on. Both the adventurer and Adam's party are panting from exertion. Growing tired of their relentless pursuit, he mutters how annoying they are. The adventurer finally stops and confronts the group, asking how long they plan to follow him. Adam deflects, claiming they are just moving to a new hunting ground. He tells them their presence is inefficient and they should hunt elsewhere. Adam accuses the adventurer of trespassing on their territory. Frustrated, the adventurer decides to end this. He prepares to use his magic. Knowing his earth magic is level 3, the adventurer believes he can now use up to 4 keywords and puts his theory to the test, casting a spell to create a deep, long pillar which erupts from the ground and sends Adam's party flying in shock. Adam, bewildered, demands to know what he is. The adventurer is ecstatic that he pulled off the complex spell on his first try. He tests the pillar's stability, noting that the deep keyword made it extend underground as he'd hoped. He then remembers he still has an audience. Deciding to act confident, he announces that he's off to hunt and tells Adam's party to do their best as well, planning to demonstrate the vast difference in their skills. After Adam's party seems to have given up, the adventurer returns to retrieve his basket. He visualizes the height he needs to reach. He casts another spell, creating a 5-meter-long pillar to use as a platform. Though the experience of retrieving his basket was scary, the experiment was a success. He calculates that one platform costs 26 MP and plans to manage his usage while hunting. He can't help but smile, thinking about how much more efficiently he can hunt now. He eagerly runs off for more. Exhausted from overdoing it, the adventurer returns to the material shop. The shopkeeper tells him to leave his haul there while he finishes up. He brought back a massive basket of spoils. The shopkeeper reveals that he knew the adventurer was the cause of the day's emergency quest, explaining that the guild had simply misunderstood due to the sheer number of poison mice he had hunted. The adventurer argues that he didn't cause an outbreak. The shopkeeper points out that while it wasn't his fault, he did trigger the emergency quest. The shopkeeper confirms the haul of 53 poison mice and 12 air mantises is correct and agrees to hold onto his rewards. The adventurer then asks for a larger basket, shocking the shopkeeper with his intent to earn even more. The shopkeeper says that while they have larger baskets, they are always in use and would be difficult for him to manage. Another worker, Warden, is shocked to hear the adventurer ran back with the heavy basket, realizing that must be the source of his incredible endurance. The shopkeeper yells at Warden to get back to work, complaining that they're swamped because of the adventurer's massive haul. While considering a custom-made basket, the adventurer prepares to report to the guild. He is suddenly confronted by Adant. Adant and his party menacingly demand he hand something over. The adventurer ignores them completely and proceeds to report the day's events to the receptionist, Amanda-san. At the counter, Amanda asks Loki if Adant's claim that he joined their party is true. Loki flatly denies it. Adant's party argues that Loki's parting words were a clear invitation. They insist that because he left his basket, they believed he was joining their party and that the rewards should be split equally. Loki is baffled by their persistence, wondering why they won't back down when the difference in their abilities is so clear. Deciding he's had enough, he resolves not to stay quiet any longer. He asks Amanda to tell him their hunter rank and earnings. She reveals that all three are rank F, and their total earnings were only around 42,000 beak. One of Adant's party members accuses Amanda of being unfit for her job for revealing their private information. She calmly retorts that they were the ones who claimed Loki was in their party and insisted on splitting the rewards equally. Loki scoffs at the idea, pointing out that no one would form a party with such a disadvantageous group when they could earn 400,000 beak solo. Loki gives them a final warning. If they continue to follow him, he will consider them his enemy. Adant taunts Loki, asking what he'll do if they become his enemies. He states that if they keep harassing him, they will be no different from goblins, and he will kill them and anyone who sides with them without mercy. As the situation escalates, Amanda desperately calls for the guild master to intervene. Adant fumes at Loki's threat. An older, distinguished man appears, asking about the commotion and tells Adant's party they are bothering everyone and orders them to come with him. An adventurer from the accused party angrily demands to know why the guild master is siding with Loki. The guild master calmly states that he is not siding with him, but intends to hear both sides of the story before making a judgment. Loki, listening in, feels a sense of relief at the man's presence. Loki listens, confused by the man's reasoning. The guild master explains that he wants to avoid a situation where someone could die, warning that if Loki and the other party became enemies, many others could get caught in the crossfire. The angry adventurer scoffs, dismissing Loki as just a kid. The guild master retorts that such thinking is why he's still an F-rank hunter, lacking a sense of crisis. He points out that the sheer volume of materials Loki brings back daily is abnormal and a clear indicator of his true strength. Hearing himself described as not normal, Loki decides to maintain a tough exterior. The guild master lists their offenses, forcibly trying to recruit Loki, attempting to rob him of his materials, and submitting a false report to the guild. He declares their actions unacceptable and regrets that they have no future as hunters. He permanently expels the three of them from the hunter registry. Loki remarks that they are lucky the incident ended at attempted robbery, as it could have escalated into a legal matter. The disgraced adventurers despair over their future. As a small mercy, the guild master offers to refer them to other work, telling them to be grateful they aren't being sold as slaves. He then turns to Loki, asking if this resolution is acceptable. To the surprise of the guild master and the other adventurer, Loki declares that the punishment is far too soft. Loki clarifies that he's not satisfied with just their punishment, he wants compensation for what he endured. The party members plead poverty, but Loki is unmoved, stating that it's their own fault for not considering the risks of their actions. Loki asserts that he is neither a hero nor a villain. He believes the adventurers haven't truly learned their lesson and that they got what they deserved. He declares his intention to instill such terror in them that they will spend the rest of their lives regretting their attempt to rob him. The guild master warns that pushing them further might cause them to seek revenge. Loki welcomes the possibility, stating that if they become thieves, he will simply beat them. He confesses that he is holding back the urge to kill them, but if they become criminals, he will do so without remorse. Terrified, the three adventurers beg for mercy, offering all their money and equipment. They are then seen leaving the guild, defeated. The guild master watches from a window as Loki approaches him. Loki thanks the guild master for his help and offers him payment for the trouble. The guild master asks if this is how Loki normally handles things. Loki explains that while it may seem excessive, he despises those who hurt others without hesitation. The guild master remarks that he'd best remain honest himself. Loki asks the receptionist, Amanda, to give some potions to Xing-kun and his friends. He explains that he owes them a debt. Amanda agrees, remarking that Loki is a strange person. The guild master finds it fascinating that Loki cleared the Rocco Plains without using a potion and suggests it's time to reassess his E rank. He advises Loki to stay sharp, quoting a proverb about the nail that sticks out getting hammered down. Loki agrees but adds that he won't go down without a fight. The guild master smirks, wondering if he pronounced the otherworld language correctly. Loki is stunned, realizing the man used a Japanese proverb. The guild master reveals he's had suspicions since their first meeting due to Loki's clothes, belongings, and manner of speaking. Now he is certain. The guild master directly asks Loki if he is from another world. Startled, Loki is quickly reassured that the man has no intention of becoming his enemy. He simply wants Loki's help to identify a certain object. He offers a commission of 1 million beak. Loki is immediately suspicious of the generous offer, but the guild master laughs, calling it a bribe to win over someone who is soft on his friends. Loki's curiosity is piqued, and he agrees to take the next day off. The guild master tells him to come to the guild when the noon bell rings. As the guild master leaves, he says he will be looking forward to their meeting. Loki mutters to himself that he's not good with that man. Suddenly a voice calls out his name. It is Regal, the goddess of war, speaking to him from afar. Regal asks if he's all right, noting he hasn't used celestial channeling since their last talk. Loki suddenly remembers his special skill. He realizes it's the perfect time to ask the goddesses a question he has. Loki activates his celestial channeling skill, now at level 2, which allows him to communicate with the goddesses for 2 minutes. An enthusiastic voice greets him. She introduces herself as Felin, the goddess of fertility. She explains that peeking into the mortal realm is their only entertainment, making Loki wary. Another, calmer voice interrupts, telling Felin that this isn't playtime. She introduces herself as List, the goddess of commerce. She informs Loki that they can read his thoughts during the channeling, so he only needs to think of his question. Loki is relieved to find a calm and collected goddess, admiring her intellectual demeanor. The goddesses react to his loud thoughts. Loki presents his question. He should have been able to use magic long ago, but it only started working a few days prior. He specifies that it was the day after he visited the church. The goddess explains that magic is aided by spirits that feed on mana. She theorizes that since spirits are followers of the gods, they couldn't recognize Loki's existence until he communicated with them. Loki is shocked to learn that without meeting them, he would have never been able to use magic. The goddess notes she briefly couldn't read his thoughts. Loki apologizes for his internal complaints. He thanks her for the answer. He asks if he can learn a new skill. He wants an item box or inventory to store his belongings. The goddess reveals that the otherworlder she gave that skill to used it for a specific purpose. Before Loki can learn more, the 2-minute time limit for his channeling runs out. He reflects that the information he gained about spirits and space magic is invaluable, especially with his meeting at the guild the next day. Loki feels excited, sensing that the story is finally moving forward. He suddenly feels strange and realizes his consciousness is fading. Loki wakes with a start, surprised to find it's already morning. He struggles to remember what happened, recalling the overwhelming drowsiness that hit him after his celestial channeling session. He checks himself for injuries or poison but finds none, though he notices his mana hasn't fully recovered. As he gets out of bed, he spots a sword nearby and begins to pace together the events of the previous night. He remembers his routine of depleting his mana for experience before bed, followed by using the celestial channeling skill. He realizes he didn't have enough on his own, but the short sword from Paisasan boosted his maximum mana, allowing him to use the skill. Loki concludes that he must have collapsed from severe mana depletion after using the sword's borrowed power. The thought of this happening in the middle of a hunt is terrifying, as it would be a death sentence. He has a brief moment of panic, wondering if such a drain could be fatal in this world. He quickly shakes it off to prepare for the busy day ahead. Now dressed, Loki plans his day. First, collect the confiscated items from yesterday's incident, for which he's already scheduled an appraisal. As he walks through the guild hall, he overhears other adventurers gossiping about him, recognizing him as the kid who had another party's hunter status revoked and took all their gear. Loki is unfazed, having expected the gossip. He reflects on his past experiences with online games, where standing out always attracted envy and resentment that could escalate into attacks. He considers it a waste when players quit over such pressure. To him, as long as the guild functions properly, the opinions of others are irrelevant. He muses that dealing with random people is a waste of time, and that being alone is much more comfortable. Just then, a cheerful voice calls out his name as a young girl, flanked by 2 boys, excitedly points him out. The group approaches, and the blonde boy explains they came to thank him for the potions. Knowing he usually leaves early for hunting, they rushed over to catch him. The girl offers to help carry his things. A slightly distracted Loki agrees. Later, Loki arrives at the church for an audience with the goddesses. A nun greets him, impressed by his piety. Meanwhile, the blonde boy from earlier gives the nun a basket as an offering, explaining it's an apology and a way to ensure Loki has enough time for his prayers. Kneeling before the altar, Loki calls out to the goddesses. A gentle voice responds, telling him he can open his eyes, and he finds himself transported to a bright, ethereal meadow. 3 beautiful women greet him, introducing themselves as Felin, the goddess of fertility, Firil, the goddess of life, and List, the goddess of commerce. Loki is utterly captivated by their beauty. He internally praises Felin's dazzling cuteness. He admires Firil's overwhelming warmth. He is struck by List's mysterious elegance. Firil chuckles, gently reminding him that they can hear all his flattering thoughts. Mortified, Loki asks if he can go home, but Felin playfully refuses. She then guides the bewildered boy to a table and chairs that have suddenly appeared. She invites him to sit. As they sit, Felin remarks how impressive it is that he survived snapping at Regal and Rhea, who aren't known for their gentle tempers. Loki acknowledges that the previous misunderstanding has mostly been resolved. Felin reassures him that it's all fine now. They know he doesn't possess any world-destroying skills and just want to get along. Felin also notes that just as Rhea mentioned, her mind's eye skill doesn't work on his soul. Loki asks if he is in his soul form, which Felin confirms. She explains they couldn't transport his physical body. Panicked, Loki worries that his body is defenseless at the church. Firil calmly reassures him that they've cast space-time magic to make time flow very slowly there, ensuring his safety. Upon learning their magic is a skill, Loki asks if it is something he can learn. He muses about whether he could learn it someday. Firil tells him it's possible for some skills. She then leans closer, explaining that just as he is curious about them, they are curious to hear his story too. This leaves a flustered Loki speechless. Firil encourages him to ask them anything he's curious about. Overwhelmed but excited, Loki launches into an enthusiastic question-and-answer session. After their talk, Loki is completely satisfied, marveling at the amazing world and its concepts of exclusive skills and longevity. The goddesses mention the world is managed by a god named Furzasama. At the mention of the name, Loki's mood shifts. The goddesses exchange worried glances. He cautiously brings up his awful impression of Furza, which he got from Rhea's comment about the world being abandoned. Loki immediately regrets saying something unnecessary, especially after just clearing up a previous misunderstanding. He reflects on his inherent distrust of blind faith in gods. The goddesses explain their role. They are forbidden from directly interfering and can only observe and guide the world from afar. Loki quietly accepts that their divine roles can't be changed by mortal opinions. Noticing his concern, List smiles and calls him a kind soul for worrying about them. Loki becomes flustered again, exclaiming that he's still not used to having his thoughts read so easily. Felin excitedly decides it's time to tell Loki something important. List then asks him if he is familiar with a world called Earth. Loki confirms it's where he used to live. The goddesses reveal that Earth is also one of the worlds managed by Furzasama and is considered his greatest success. Confused by their jealousy, Loki asks what that implies about this world. Firil explains that this world became overly dependent on magic and skills, causing its civilization to stagnate and begin a slow decline. To prevent its ruin, they summon the souls of Earthlings, needing the knowledge and wisdom from a more advanced civilization. The goddesses confirm that hero Takuya is one of these summoned Earthlings, given powerful skills to help him spread knowledge. The truth dawns on Loki. Earthlings are summoned to revitalize this world. This revelation clarifies many of his own strange feelings, but it also raises a new, pressing question about his own purpose. A wave of self-doubt hits Loki. He feels he has no right to complain about others getting cheat powers when he lacks the knowledge this world needs. While everyone else from Earth is working to help this world, he's just been doing whatever he wants, relying on the goddess's kindness. He questions if what he's been doing is truly okay. Feeling lost and facing an existential crisis about his role in this world, Loki looks earnestly at the goddesses. He pleads with them for guidance, asking the fundamental question that now defines his existence: how should he live? An older man offers a drink to a young man, thanking him for his company. He then offers to share what he knows about the 4 people from another world who are shaking this one to its very core. Yahello points to a map, identifying the 4 key figures: Beast King Hans of the Ilian Republic, Great Magnate Marie of the Albert Kingdom, Marshal Shiva of the Velfair Empire, and Hero Takuya of the Elgran Kingdom. The young man listens, wondering how many might be Japanese and speculating that Shiva could be using an alias, much like himself. Yahello asks the young man to confirm that he arrived in this world a few months ago. The boy agrees, recalling how he was suddenly dropped into the Great Pomera Forest. Yahello explains that this method of arrival is what distinguishes him from the other 4. The others were all reincarnated, born into this world with their past memories intact. The young man realizes the fundamental difference between being transported and being reincarnated. Yahello confirms his understanding. The boy recalls the goddesses telling him that the people they brought over had died in their previous lives and were given a fresh start. He understands that someone who was suddenly transported at their current age would stick out like a sore thumb. Yahello explains his caution stemmed from the fact that he'd never heard of anyone being transported before. The boy counters that relics like modern technology prove there must have been others. Yahello considers the possibility of more transported individuals existing. He apologizes for testing the boy about otherworld languages earlier, which makes him feel pressured. Yahello admits he thought the boy might be working for Hero Takuya, causing the boy to erupt in anger, questioning why he would ever be that guy's pawn. Yahello explains that he couldn't ignore someone using the name Loki. He clarifies that the Demon King is from a fictional heroic tale that Takuya himself created. The boy, who reveals his name is also Loki, finds it impressive that someone would make up a story where they are the hero. Yagov redirects the conversation back to the main topic. He begins with hero Takuya, the crown prince of the Elgrand kingdom, known as the most upright person in the world. Yagov clarifies that while the tale may be fiction, Takuya's strength is real, earning him the nickname Hero. He adds that Takuya is a womanizer, a fact that disgusts Loki. Yagov remarks that Takuya is the most reasonable of the otherworlders and introduced the saying, "The nail that sticks out gets hammered down." Loki nervously asks about the others. Next, Yagov describes Shiva, the marshal of the Welfare Empire, a ruthless figure rumored to kill anyone without hesitation, who has been at war with Elgrand for 5 years. Then there is Marie, a noble of the Albert Kingdom, who has amassed incredible wealth with a transfer skill, monopolizing logistics and profiting from the war by supplying both sides. Yagov explains that these 3 nations are the world's main forces, possessing immense power. Loki curses their cheat abilities. Yagov observes Loki's mixed feelings and notes that while reincarnators bring innovation, countries without one are likely to be annexed. Lastly, Yagov introduces Beast King Hans of the Ilian Republic, who unified various beastfolk and monsters to strengthen his nation. Though less flashy, Hans is feared for liberating beastfolk slaves by attacking their owners. Loki is excited to learn that beastfolk exist. He thinks Hans sounds the most decent of the 4. Loki realizes Yagov's view of the otherworlders is different from what the goddesses told him. He feels powerless for now. Yagov warns him to be careful, and Loki resolves to stay away from Shiva's region. Yagov insists that's not enough. He reminds Loki that countries without an otherworlder are likely to be annexed and must be watched. Yagov warns that if Loki's identity is exposed, nations will try to recruit him by any means necessary. Loki says he doesn't mind a normal recruitment attempt, but Yagov flatly tells him that's not possible, advising him to live quietly. Yagov seems to have expected this response. Loki's demeanor hardens as he declares that if anyone interferes with his desire to hunt monsters and grow stronger, he will respond with force. As night has fallen, Yagov decides to leave and Loki thanks him. Yagov calls his name one last time. Yagov extends an invitation for Loki to join him and the Legree's kingdom, offering protection. Loki dismisses the offer as a joke, saying he is used to them. Yagov remarks that Loki is also good at brushing things off. Yagov gives a final warning, stating that if Loki ever involves innocent civilians, he will oppose him and brand him a dangerous otherworlder. As Yagov leaves, Loki watches him go. Loki thinks his words were a mix of honesty and concern. Loki reflects that while Bezart is just his starting town, he has no plans on staying. However, he feels indebted to the people he's met. He is determined not to be someone who forgets their debts. He bows to the departing Yagov, vowing to do his best not to cause trouble. He expertly takes down a poison mouse, breathing heavily from the exertion. With his quota cleared, he receives a notification that he has acquired poison resistance level 7. Loki notes that the gains from hunting poison mice are diminishing. He decides it's time to review his skills. He pulls up his status screen, still amazed by how impressive it looks every time he sees it. He muses on how skills are gained, realizing he must have unconsciously met requirements while hunting. He's particularly concerned about a new skill which he has no memory of learning. It's called Berserk, a skill that provides a powerful but uncontrollable boost. He concludes it's far too scary to test. Loki realizes that in this world, no skill is useless. This is because of the status bonuses they grant, which from his perspective as a hardcore gamer, is a god-tier system. Since leveling up a skill also boosts related stats, it's a highly efficient way to get stronger. With his break over, he gets back to training. He uses Expand Vision to survey the area and search to pinpoint his target. He then uses Quickstep to close the distance for a swift attack. Loki feels a deep sense of satisfaction, realizing he is truly getting stronger. This simple joy is a stark contrast to the heavy burden of his recent conversation with Yagov about nations and his purpose in this world. He decides that in the end, hunting and growing stronger is all he has. With renewed purpose, he sets his sights on a new challenge, the Lulav forest. All of a sudden,